LinkedIn quietly changed the game heading into 2026. And if you're still using the same posting strategy that worked a year or two ago, you're not just stagnating, you're actively falling behind. I know that because over the last few years, I've worked closely with founders and revenue operators who rely on LinkedIn to drive real pipeline, not vanity metrics. And I've watched the platform evolve fast. See, the people winning right now aren't always working harder on the platform. They just understand what LinkedIn actually rewards in 2026. In this video, I'm going to break down what changed, why results are getting worse, and how to position yourself to win now. First, let's talk about what's going wrong. Over the last few years, LinkedIn content in particular has gone from being a nice to have to being the default growth strategy for many B2B companies, especially in B2B SaaS, AI, and service-based businesses. It used to be that 5-6 years ago, only 1% of people actually posted on the platform. Now, I suspect that it's a lot higher than that. If people need to raise funding for their startup, one of the first things they'll say is we need to be on LinkedIn. So they go and they either hire a marketer or an expensive agency, or they start posting themselves 5 times a week with no plan. On paper, it sounds smart to ease in that way. But here's the issue. AI plus saturation equals noise. AI tools have reduced the cost of creating content to basically zero. Anyone can generate a pretty good LinkedIn post in about 30 seconds. And when everyone can create content nearly instantly, the feed fills up with generic advice, safe takes, and recycled frameworks. At the same time, LinkedIn's algorithm has changed a lot. If you've been consistent for a while and doing everything right, you may have noticed something uncomfortable. Your reach is down. Not because you got worse, but because the platform has got more competitive. So why reach is down? It's happening for 3 big reasons. Number 1 is platform maturity. So we see this all across the Western world, that as a social media platform matures, organic reach declines in favor of pushing paid advertising. That's not anything new. That's just capitalism, my friend. We've seen it with Instagram, YouTube, basically any platform where the product is attention, it will eventually start to push pay to play. The second reason is timeline saturation. There are simply more posts on the platform vying for attention now. 5 years ago, back when it was, 1% of the audience were posting, it was a lot easier to get that visibility. So if more people fighting for attention, it makes it even more important to stand out with content. And that leads me to my third point, AI content inflation. The feed is flooded with content that looks fine, but it's very vanilla and very safe. I'm not sure if you've seen the video with Ben Affleck talking about AI, but I reckon that he understands AI better than 99% of the AI gurus on LinkedIn. One of the things he said is, by its very nature, without proper guardrails, AI is just going to produce an average piece of content. That's the nature of it. It's a derivative of a derivative. And LinkedIn has responded to this by being more selective about what it services and who it services it to, which leads to the most important shift, the algorithm shift nobody is talking about. LinkedIn is no longer pushing new content. Instead, it's resurfacing a lot of older posts. It's super annoying when I see a date-dependent post pop up in my feed about 2 or 3 weeks after it's happened. But I have to go catch up with my mate, ask questions about it. It's just really annoying. But what's interesting, it's now starting to show content from people that you don't actually know. And it's testing posts quietly before giving them real distribution. What does this translate to? You can't rely on post and pray anymore. So what actually works? This is the new rule for LinkedIn in 2026. If I had to summarize LinkedIn's algorithm in one line, it would be this. You're rewarded for content that only you could have created. So it's no longer how-to content, but how-I content. Things like hilarious stories, specific examples, first-hand experiences, proprietary insights, basically anything that AI is not able to replicate is what you should be thinking about. And it's really shifting away from giving advice to sharing experiences. So instead of saying things like, here's how to scale outbound, you'd say, here's what broke when we decided to scale up our outreach efforts. And more importantly, how we fixed it. It's the same topic, but completely different impact. The algorithm favors specific stories, real decisions, and clear opinions backed by experience. That's why one post, just one post with the right story, can outperform 20 value-based posts. And I've seen this time and time again in my own content. So if you're either starting up your LinkedIn for the first time or giving it a crack after a long reset over the Christmas break, your first post should be this: your origin story. You can talk about why you started your business, what's went wrong in the past, what has changed your thinking. These kinds of posts constantly outperform any other type of post because it's human, it's memorable, and it creates context for everything you post afterwards. Now, while generic advice is dead, data-driven insights are not. So if you have internal metrics, benchmarks, or perhaps you've conducted different types of experiments and you have the before and after numbers, use them. Specific numbers plus visuals really help to improve credibility. Any Tom, Dick, or Harry can share an opinion. Very few people can share proof. For example, we do a lot of outreach, and you'll see here inside of our Dripify account that we have very specific numbers to back up what we're seeing in terms of outreach for different types of professions. So we are getting anywhere from 20 to 50% plus sometimes in our campaigns in terms of connection rate and acceptance rate. And then our response rate can be anywhere north of 50%. These are real numbers from real accounts. It's this kind of thinking that you need to bring into your own link. Now, another important thing to note is media type matters. So what I mean by media type is what you're putting along with your text post. Now, text-only posts can work, and there is a bit of nuance to this, which I'm going to share in a second, but posts relevant imagery and relevant photographs and videos will still outperform text-only posts. Now, if you have an office, team members, a whiteboard, here's mine. I use this quite a bit in some of my images. Or perhaps you have a physical product of some form. Turn that into recurring content. Think of your company as a content asset or a studio of sorts, not just a logo. And over time, what it does is it helps to show that you are a real person. It's not an AI generated slop machine that you're producing. It's the real world with, cups and coffee cups and pieces of paper lying around. Don't be afraid to show those imperfections, because that is what makes us human. Now, I mentioned previous about there is nuance to this in that what is your capacity and stage of content? I always say to clients that improving your writing skills is the foundation to every other type of content. Not only is it the lowest friction piece of media that you can produce, you can literally just type or even voice dictate your post. It's also the foundation of every other piece of media. So if you can write a post, you're also able to write a video outline and a hook. You can write a static carousel. You can write the emotions that should be on your face in the photograph with no text on screen, because when the two paired side by side, they can give greater context. That's why it's so important in the early days to really practice your ability to write, or at least heavily edit what ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever you're using writes. Now, there's a hidden advantage to LinkedIn that most founders ignore. It's not about the algorithm, it's actually about the network that you can actively shape. So you shouldn't rely solely on the organic reach of your posts. You should also be doing proactive outbound as well. And this combo of using both content and outreach in tandem is what I call all bound. And it's the new way to think in 2026. So here's a simple outbound cadence for you if you're literally starting from zero. Just send 5 connection requests per day. Make sure it's to your right kind of prospect inside of LinkedIn. And you don't even need to write any content whatsoever in this stage. And then when you're ready to start creating content, rather than posting right away, what you can do is spend 15 minutes of thoughtful comments on either your ideal client profile or large creators who are likely to be followed by your ideal client profile. So what I mean by that is, say for example, you are a business coach. You're likely going to want to engage with other business owners who could be potentially clients of yours. Or you might want to engage with someone like Daniel Priestley, who is a very well-known business coach based out of the UK, former Aussie bloke. He has a very large following. So if you comment on his post, your posts will get visibility with other people. And one of the big benefits here of commenting rather than creating your own posts is you don't have to be proactively creative like you have to be with your own posts. You can be reactively creative. And what I mean by that is they've done the work of setting the subject matter. You just have to sprinkle in your own ideas and opinions when it's relevant and when you have something decent to say. It's a great way to get your creative muscles moving, because it is a muscle. Being creative is a muscle, especially if you're from a technical background like, a lawyer or an accountant, where being creative isn't very easy or doesn't come naturally. It's a bit like going to the gym and going from the couch to doing 5 strength sessions every week for an hour. You're not going to do it, and you likely pull something. So start small and you start building on these things until eventually you're at a point where you can regularly produce content. And the litmus test for when it's working is, I work with a lot of B2B service-based businesses who do a lot of networking in person as well. And you'll find that once you start regularly creating content, that it will become a topic of conversation at those networking events. So that's how you know when you're on the right track. So I'll give you an example of that, right? Since December 2025, I've set myself the challenge to publish every single day on LinkedIn. Do I need to? Absolutely not. You could probably get away with doing just 3 posts a week. Some of my posts will smash it with 30K plus impressions, and others will die in the arse with just 100 or 200 impressions. But what I always do is take a mental note in my head of who my professional network engages with my content. I went to a networking event recently and I spoke to a finance broker who's like a perfect prospect of mine, who I've known for a while. And I know for a fact he never engages with my content. He said, "You've been putting a lot of great stuff on LinkedIn recently, especially like the one about, the square LinkedIn video insight that you made." Now that post was nowhere near my highest performing that once, but it shows that on LinkedIn, your active engagement metrics don't always tell the whole story. There is a lot of voyeurism on LinkedIn, and a lot of those voyeurs are busy, highly successful people who could become a client of yours one day. Now, this next tip is really important, especially if you're serious about having LinkedIn as a primary pipeline generator for your business. Use Sales Navigator. Get a subscription. It is really worth it. It will allow you to filter people by the size of the company they're in, their role, their location, even if they've posted recently on LinkedIn, which is a really useful tool because you know that you're only going to be speaking to people who have at least been active in the last month. And having a paid tool like this, I think it's 150 Australian dollars at the moment per month, it reduces your reliance on the algorithm. And you can get in front of exactly the right people consistently. As well as the benefits of targeting people, it also increases the ceiling of outbound inbound from 400 people to 600 people per month, which if you're doing big volume regularly, that can make quite a significant impact. And now for the advanced play, EGC content. So what EGC stands for is employee generated content. The fastest growing companies on LinkedIn don't rely on one person or one founder for their LinkedIn growth. They've got multiple founders, key operators, and employees who are keen on building a professional brand for themselves. Now, most fixed, small-minded business owners are actively against their employees posting on LinkedIn content, but the major players see it as massive leverage. And that distribution starts to compound when more voices show up. I'll give you an example. So here in Sydney, there's a startup SaaS called Kinzo that's working on a product that will basically unify all of your inboxes. So your email, your WhatsApp, your iMessage, all of these things are going into one place so you can just work your inbox, move on. It's headed up by the Grief brothers, who sold their previous business for 180 million. So let me show you here. So this is Frank, and I think I've got his brother Jacques on here as well. So they're the 2 founders, but they also have, basically their story is they hired a load of Gen Z staff members, gave them a stake in the business, and now those junior members like Braith are also posting. So it's getting a lot of attention. And what's great as well is I'm pretty sure Jock hates the idea of doing content, but understands the importance of it. For those junior members of staff, most people would think, oh, well, they're junior, they don't really have anything to post. But for those members of staff who are keen and are in sort of generation where they may not be necessarily thought leaders yet, the way they share their content is very much like an enthusiastic apprentice to those 2 founders. So there's always a way for basically anyone who's willing to show up and make it a team effort when it comes to LinkedIn content for a particular company. Needless to say, they are killing it. Now, the added benefit of employee-generated content, when it comes to attracting the best talent as they scale, it's going to be so much easier because many people in that generation are already aware of this company solely through organic content, because they're showcasing in public that their company culture is one of fast growth and rapid learning for ambitious operators. Now, LinkedIn in 2026 is harder, but it's still the best platform for B2B. You just can't play by the old rules anymore. Now, if you want to see where to prioritize your time on LinkedIn, what activity to do, how often to spend, and how to turn it into pipeline, watch this video next. I'll see you there.